Hi everyone, it's Heath with OptionStrat here to show you how the strategy builder works. The strategy builder is essentially an options profit calculator that makes it easy to build and adjust strategies to see their profit potential in real time. If you ever bought an option and wondered how much you would make if the stock moved a certain amount by a certain date, or didn't know what strike or strategy would get you the most profit, this tool can answer that. To get started, just hover over the build menu at the top of the site and select a strategy. Most people will probably just choosing a simple long call or put, but there's a ton of strategies to choose from. Intermediate strategies include multi-leg strategies with defined risk. Moving to advanced strategies adds potentially unlimited risk. There's also expert strategies that are more complex and only have very unique use cases. To show how it works, I'll start with a basic call strategy. If it's your first time using OptionStrat, you'll have to search for a stock or ETF first. You can search for any stock with options by its name or symbol here. Once you choose a stock, it'll take you to the strategy builder and create a default strategy based on the type you selected. At the top here, you can see the stock that you selected, its current price, and the daily change. As far as building the strategy goes, the first thing you'll want to do is select an expiration. It defaults to about 30 days out, so I'll keep it at that, but you can also click and drag the expirations to show all of them. Similarly, you can just drag the call to any strike to change it. If you need to select a strike farther out, you can drag the entire strike selector at once. The red and green bars in the background are a premium feature which shows the relative volume for each strike so you can find the most active strikes easier. As you drag the strike or adjust the expiration, you can see the profit and loss and other stats update in real time. This is what makes OptionStrat so easy to use, since you can immediately see how any adjustment to a strategy will affect its profit potential. Digging into these stats, the first one is a net debit, which just means the cost to buy the option or open the trade. If you choose a credit strategy, it would show the net credit here instead. Next up are the max loss and max profit, which are pretty self-explanatory. Then you have the break-even price, which is where SPY needs to get by expiration in order for you to make any profit at all. For other strategies, you may need the stock to get below a certain price or even between or around certain prices. OptionStrat will recognize all of those scenarios and display the break-evens here. Premium members can also see the chance of profit, which uses the implied move to calculate the likelihood of the stock to reach the break-even. If you swipe the stats panel over, you can see the Greeks for the strategy. These are generally multiplied by 100 to be in dollar amounts so that we can compare it with the strategy stats. For example, normally theta would be negative 0.104. In this case, it's negative 10.4, which makes it easier to reason about, meaning the strategy will lose approximately $10 per day. Moving on to the profit and loss chart, this is what you spend most of your time looking at. It shows you how much you will make or lose depending on what day it is and what the underlying stock is at. For example, if SPY goes up to $445 by August 2nd, you would make approximately $347. On the other hand, if SPY stays relatively flat, by expiration, you would lose your max loss. Note that the dark red and dark green areas mean that the strategy has reached at least 100% loss or 100% profit. If you want to zoom in or out on the chart, you can adjust the chart range accordingly. In addition to the profit and loss table, there is a profit and loss graph, which essentially shows the profit and loss potential for a single day. You can drag the days until expiration slider and see how, as time goes on, the strategy will lose value. For example, at expiration, you would lose money unless SPY is above the break-even, which is highlighted in blue. You can use the graph view to find the break-even price for other days actually, since you aren't always interested in holding an option until near the expiration date. There are also a few different units that can be displayed on the table and chart. It defaults to the profit and loss in dollars, but it can also be useful to look at the profit and loss percentage, which is just a percent difference from the net credit or debit of the strategy. There's also the contract value, which is the theoretical price of the underlying contracts. So right now the contract is about $6, and it shows you what the price may be in the future. There's also percent of max risk. In this case, the max risk is the same as the net debit, so it's not entirely useful here, but for other strategies it is. Now, if you want to build a more complex strategy, you can select a pre-made one from the menu above, or you can use the editing buttons to add options yourself. For example, we can turn this into a bear call spread by clicking Add Option, adding a new strike, and then adjusting it to where we want it. You can also right-click anywhere on the strike selector to add a strike directly at that price. Clicking on any option will open an additional menu where you can adjust the quantity, price, or type, and see the Greeks, volume, open interest, and implied volatility. For example, I can switch this call to a put by just clicking this button. I can adjust the quantity, or I can remove it from the strategy. You can also click the flip button to invert the options in the strategy. Back to the menu, if you click the price, you can enter a custom cost basis. Use this if you already have opened the position and want to show the profit and loss charts using the price you made your trade at. For example, say you made this trade at $2 a few days ago. You can just type it in and press enter, and everything will update. Now there's a lot more green on the chart because using this entry price means you've already made nearly 100%, so you can afford for the stock to go down a lot more now. The toggle over here changes the pricing mode used. It defaults to the mid price, which uses the midpoint of the bid and the ask. But you can also choose the bid-ask mode, which uses the ask price for long options and the bid price for short options. Some options are a lot less active than SPY, and so the spread between the bid and the ask price can be pretty wide. So using bid-ask mode will show pricing that you're more likely to actually be able to open a trade with. In the case of this strategy, it doesn't really matter, but for less active stocks, it will. Getting into some more advanced features, you can also add another expiration in order to build diagonal and calendar spreads. Once you add an additional expiration, you can right-click on an option and change the expiration that it's using. While the predicted prices are very accurate, the one thing that can't be predicted is how implied volatility will change over the lifetime of an option. Implied volatility is an estimate of the movement of future prices based on how the market is currently pricing options. It is factored into the calculations, and a lot of times it will stay relatively constant, but in certain scenarios, implied volatility can change a lot, and it's a big factor in the profitability of many option strategies. For a long call or put, increasing volatility is helpful to your position, and decreasing volatility is harmful. You can use this slider to see how changes in it will affect your strategy. For example, when IV drops after earnings, a potentially profitable position can turn unprofitable overnight. Lastly, there are two features I'd like to go over at the top. The historical chart button will open a chart of the option contract value, so you can see the historical prices of it. You can toggle the time frame as well as turn between line chart mode and candlestick mode. You can also save your trade to track it and refer back to it later. If you just want to send the trade to someone, you can copy the link in the URL at any time, but if you save the trade, it'll track it, it'll allow you to enter a name and a description, and the link you get is a lot shorter. So I'll go ahead and save this trade here. When you click on one of these save strategies, it'll load it using the price that you entered it at. If you want to reset the cost basis of your position, you can just click the reload button on the options menu. That's about it for how to use the strategy builder. I'll be going over the other tools that OptionStrat has in future videos. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out over email to support@optionstrat.com. We also have an active Discord chat that you can join as well.